NCRP Productions presents the Fireside Chat series. Well, welcome to another Fireside Chat. This is Barry.
Hey, this is Pedro.
And we're going to talk to you today. We've been thinking about what do you guys need to know about the crazy stuff we've been doing. We're going to talk to you today about where are we?
Yep.
And Pedro, we were looking at starting with, we were just discussing, where were we? Like, where did all of this start?
Yeah, I mean, it's wild to think we've been doing this for about 6 months now.
About 6 months, yeah.
Yeah, so six months ago, we've been gaming. I mean, I've been gaming with you for over 5 years now?
Been over 5 years,
yeah, over
at least.
5 years
Yeah.
now, and you've been gaming for longer, and I've been gaming for
A
longer.
lot longer than that.
Yeah, so and we've podcasts starting to really get big, and we talked about our games and how much fun we have, and we thought, hey, what's a crazy idea? What if we tried recording it?
Yeah, I remember discussing it with you and asking, because I remember probably over a year and a half ago, I remember thinking, these podcasts thing, do people really listen to other people play games? How strange. And then I tried a few. I tried listening to Critical Role. I tried listening to Glass Cannon podcasts, and they were interesting. And some of them were actually a lot of fun. Started listening to more and more and realized, okay, I can see it. But then the question becomes, are we good enough?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on my end, I had been listening to People Game for a while at the time. I mean, I started with, Acquisitions Inc., I think is where I really started.
Sure.
And then I remember just thinking how crazy it is that, these guys are doing this and how fun it is just to listen. And I'm like, wow, this is crazy.
Well, you listen to some of the stuff. The guys from Acquisitions Inc. were talking in one of the discussions they had about going to a convention and suddenly looking out and seeing X number of thousand people waiting in the audience to watch them play a game. And I remember Matt from Critical Role, Matt Mercer, was saying the same thing. He said they had no idea when they were going out that there would be that many people in the audience. They thought a couple people might show up. So, yeah, it's kind of taken things by storm.
Yeah, and it's great, too, that it's becoming such, a mainstream thing, the hobby. And so, so then we had talked about it and decided, hell yeah, let's give it a shot. And
that sounds kind of positive, but I think the reality is we talked about it and we kind of let it go.
Yeah.
And then we got that.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Think about it. The crazy thing was we get the money, we get the stimulus money.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Last year. And I remember asking you, I said, hey, so I got a crazy idea. Remember we were talking about that podcast thing. What if I were to buy some mics, a mixing board, computer, and you were like, yeah, I feel like you were there in spirit, but we're giving me the whole spirit at the time.
Yeah. I think that's probably, I think it's that self-doubt.
Oh, yeah.
That has been a real, luckily we're doing much better now, but I think it definitely in the beginning, I think with any endeavor, you're not like, well, yeah, they're doing it, but me do that?
Yeah.
What makes you think I could do that?
That's a huge detractor, that self-doubt thing. You hear all the time, fake it till you make it, all of those type of things. But boy, it sits there and you start listening and you're like, I don't sound good. It's not an interesting topic. Oh God, nobody's going to listen to me.
And then luckily we broke through it enough to at least start. And then, we really, it's funny how we started because, we were like, well, what are we going to do? We have it all. Setting it up was a whole thing too, like having to research and find okay, well, what's a good setup? I remember having to look up, different mics and stuff, because for anybody who doesn't do this, there's a whole lot to this, but there's things like, and you can look this up later if you want, folks, but, condenser mics versus dynamic mics,
right.
Which is the best one. We went with dynamic mics, which I think, honestly, was a good thing because you're hearing it now. It
was a great choice.
Yeah.
And I'm going to let you out there know, Pedro spent at least 2 weeks picking out just the mics. I just wanted to make sure it was the right one. And, part of that's making sure, part of that, doubling back, making sure, was this the right choice? Oh, well, right.
There's, every other article you read is like, yeah, this is a great choice, but what about this?
Right.
And then, so we got the mic, then we had to do the digital interface, where we plug all the mics in, the soundboard, and then learning the soundboard, too.
God. Yeah, you spent hours doing that, trying to figure out how does this work. Even to the point of us plugging in the mics. So the one that we're using is a Zoom setup, and we were plugging in mics, trying to figure out how it goes. There are 4 buttons to get the thing going. It's not. It is plug and play. It is absolutely plug and play, like it said. But it's plug, play, and then do a whole bunch of stuff to make it work.
Exactly. Yeah. Set it all to 0 and don't touch a lot of buttons. Right. Yeah, you'll get it to work basically. And then not to mention having to figure out the program, making them talk. I think we recorded a little bit at first before we realized, none of the sound was going through the mics. So it was all from the computer. Why does it sound so far off?
And I'll let you know, again, Pedro did a lot of research work on finding things. We tried Cakewalk. We were mixing in Hit Film. We ended up on Audacity as the program that we're using to actually take the raw data down. And that was quite a bit of work. And then having you learn that, because I don't have, not that you have that much time, but I don't have as much time as you do to be able to do things like that. So it feels like we've got that part down, like getting the stuff into the computer and getting the stuff from the computer back out to the viewers, listeners. I think we've gotten that mostly down.
Yeah, and of course there's always more to learn, but kudos on you for getting it down, doing the editing.
Thank you.
It's a lot, and luckily for anybody who wants to do this too, Audacity is free. But with that free comes the price of having to take some time to learn it. But once you do, it's fun.
It's wonderful.
And then so we set everything up, and so then we were thinking, well, what could we play? And then our friend Michael, who is in the game and ran the first one we did, our Dishonored game, was like, well, hey, I just picked up the Dishonored RPG, and there's a little short, keyword short at the time, adventure in the back. Why don't we run that? And we're like, yeah, let's test it out. So we got a game together. It was you, me, Michael, and Ty.
Right. The first setup was the three of us. It's funny because my memory is, I know Michael had picked up Dishonored the day we talked about it, had picked it up at my store at North Coast Role Playing that day. It was still in the shrink wrap when he was talking to us about it, and he said, well, I can learn this, let's do this. So that was kind of a fun start to it.
Oh yeah, no, and it was fun because he talked like, we'll do a couple sessions, shouldn't be more than a few, get a nice idea for it. And then we played one, and we were just like, "This is it. This is great.
It was fun.
Let's we'll play a few more. Yeah, just a few games. We'll just see." And those few games turned into the whole gosh darn campaign.
14
for season
episodes for season 1. And season 1 did not end the entire intro adventure that he keeps reminding us, talks about the intro adventure in the book, tells you that it's going to take 2 or 3 sessions.
Yeah, if I after knowing what we have done and what could do, I don't know how anybody, unless you just really streamline, unless you super streamline, is going to do this in a few sessions.
Sure, well, it's things like not getting into a bar fight, not taking a box of rocks and smashing it around someone's room. I mean, if you do all the basics and ignore the side.
Oh, you got to deal with the dead eels. Make a roll. Okay, you fight them off. Okay, great. Now that there's 2 sessions gone. But
I can see the short of it.
Yeah.
What was nice for me is we started with Michael running Dishonored, and it was the 3 of us, and we were kind of enjoying ourselves, kind of putting things together. I don't know that I had even edited the first episode at that point, but I had thrown the episode over to you, and Sequoia had said, hey, I'd like to listen and see what you guys are doing. And I think the greatest compliment to us as a group, because I don't know about you, but I was very, very nervous. I thought, boy, do we sound good? Does it sound stupid? And her saying, and Sequoia saying, you know what? I want in.
Yeah.
It was like, wow.
It was pretty crazy because I wasn't even sure if they would, want to listen. Of course they're super supportive, so started listening, and then after a couple of episodes,
she says, "I want it in." And we got her in. Michael and her worked on her character. I like the fact that her character is very fleshed out. You, the listeners, don't really know that much about Finney yet. No. You're learning. We, the players, didn't actually know that much about Ty's character.
No. Yeah, no. I mean, there were several reveals. We won't, don't want to spoil too much, but yeah, there was several reveals.
Angus's backstory blew me away. As the game started progressing, we learned more and more. I remember those last 2 episodes. I kept turning around and going, what? So I think Ty had spent enough time reading it and getting it set, so he had his stuff hidden. But Sequoia got the full beginning. We were playing. We had done a zero session. She hadn't been here for that, so she was actually able to take the time to review the book and figure things out.
Oh, yeah.
But it was wonderful. We had such a good time. We got good reviews from people who were listening. We keep hoping there's going to be more. But to start with, it was fun to have at least some people getting back to us and giving us ideas of things that they thought we could do. One of the things we learned, one of the things at least that seems more comfortable, for two reasons. One, just for the listener, cutting the episodes down. We were often running 3 to 4 hours on those first couple episodes. And they're wonderful. There's nothing wrong with it. But we had gotten a number of people saying, hey, I can't sit through it, not because I don't want to, but because I just don't have 3 or 4 hours at a time. And depending on how I'm listening to it, I can't stop in the middle and then restart, or it's very difficult. So one of the things we got was toning down the time to a smaller time frame. And it sure is easier. The second side of it is it sure is easier on the editing thing.
Yeah.
When I finish an episode editing, often it takes me more than twice as long as the episode to edit it. So if we have an hour and a half of raw work, it'll probably take me about 3 to 3.5 hours to edit it down to what we send out. And during that time, I'm cutting things, I'm changing things, I'm cleaning things up, rearranging a couple of parts, adding in music, adding in the sound effects that we've got that weren't put on the weren't put on the sound or onto the track while we were actually playing. But then coming out of that, learning those things, I felt pretty good when we started moving to our next step.
Yeah, no, we did. And, I mean, we learned a lot in those first little bit. You know, the first episodes, please do listen to them. They're a little rough, but even then, the story's there. I think there's a lot to them, and it just gets better. But yeah, so then going from there, I mean, we really took off, especially our minds starting to, travel to, where we are now.
Right. So if we looked at that beginning part as where were we, this is where we are now. We are running Unhallowed Metropolis for you right now. We have that going on a weekly basis, like we started doing with Dishonored. We're dropping those on Fridays. When we have a Fireside chat for you, we will drop those on Wednesdays. I don't know that that's going to be every week. We sadly have lives. Hey, plug for the Patreon. We sadly have lives that we have to deal with right now. But Unhallowed has been going smooth. We just got the 3rd episode up as of this recording. We'll have the 4th episode up in about a week. And that's been moving along real well. The big thing for the Where Are We Now was us really getting to learn, and I would not call us pros, but getting to learn the social media side. Yes. And that started with you.
Yeah, it was interesting because... Like, I've used Facebook, casually for stuff.
I've used Facebook.
Yeah, I used Facebook. And Twitter, I had a Twitter, and, I've used it a little bit here or there.
I remember what the bird looked like.
Yeah. But really, it was an enjoyable process because, it was daunting at first to try and, figure out the ins and outs of Twitter. And, like, not so much even how to, like, post stuff, but, like, the community itself, which I've had a blast, like, looking into the TTRPG community, the tabletop role-playing game community.
I wouldn't have ever called it that. Yeah. I don't know it. I mean, I'm old, but I don't remember ever hearing it called TTRPG, tabletop RPG, because I guess that is a definition that's not a computer RPG or a console game RPG, but I had never thought of it that way. For me, it was just role-playing.
Yeah, now, I mean, because... colloquially, role-playing games, as far as I knew, even before I was doing this, are all video game based. And so that's
the way you thought of it?
Well, that's the way I thought of it because that's what I did first was video games.
Gotcha,
I didn't have like D&D. I knew of it offhand when I was growing up, but then in later end of high school is when I really discovered what it was, and that was like, oh, cool, it's a tabletop role playing game, because it's on the table. You're not, it's not. It's weird. It's weird when you actually delve into it and think about that. Yeah, you have to make that distinction, but. Yeah, so learning and going through the TTRPG community, and then also with the hashtags too. What hashtags to put.
That was a tough one for me to learn
because it's all all new stuff, and there's the ins and outs, the social etiquette to it. But it's a great community. They're it's, as far as besides the occasional gatekeepers and stuff you've heard
we don't have
about.
to worry about that.
Yeah, it's a fun community, fun to interact. It's fun to just go on and you don't want to learning that you don't want to just plug your stuff. You want to go and interact. You want to go and I remember having fun just like kind of looking through and being like, oh my gosh, this game this game looks neat. Eye-catching photo. Go on to the thing. Like some of their stuff, retweet their stuff. Like, hey, this looks awesome. I want to save it for later. And then them coming right back over to us and being like, oh, your stuff looks cool too. Let's follow back.
For us, I'll bring up one for us when we first, and that was you, but when we first shouted out to Modifius that we were doing Dishonored, I think that was around the time we did maybe the second teaser trailer. We didn't even drop the episode yet. So it was before January of this year of 2021. But you had done a shout out to them, and I think we had maybe 25 views at that point.
Not even very much. And I added them because I was like, this is their game.
Absolutely.
It's new. Why not? Just do it. I didn't expect any response at all.
Right.
Like, it's Modifius. Why would I?
Right. We got 406. Was that right? 406 the next 2 days.
So the next, later that day, I get a little ping, and I'm like, this can't be real. And I click on it. Modifius liked it. I was like, oh, that's super cool. A minute later, Modifius retweeted. What? And then I remember, clicking on that, and it went from 24 views. I look at it, and there's at 98 views, and I'm like, what the hell?
I remember that day I was at work, and you texted me like, we're at 130, we're at 190. We're at 260, and I'm thinking, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, and then it was nice because, we put out more content. I would tag them because, hey, you did it once, let's see. And they consistently would like our stuff. They would, retweet a couple things here or there. And it was nice to see, that's the community part.
Right.
Just being authentic. And so Twitter is going good, slowly building that up. If anybody out there is trying to do this and you think it's going to be quick, well, if it's quick for you, you somehow struck gold the first time.
Right.
It's not the norm, but it's also part of that is not being discouraged.
Right.
Just keep going, keep doing stuff. That's like me. Some days, I'll be on there and I'll get like 4 followers, and I'm like, this is perfect. Days will go by without another follower.
Right.
But then, you interact in it. It just feels good because then you're following back, and it's great. And so Twitter's been super fun. YouTube, we're on YouTube too. That's mostly just putting up the photo and the video just so people have an alternative way. Everybody has their preference on what they want to view on.
Yeah, and YouTube, we continue to get followers there. The big one for the Where Are We Now really honestly was opening up with Patreon.
Yes.
We had a running joke of potentially doing an OnlyFans just because I'll tell you the secret back for me is I had always heard that Patreon was the place where people who currently use OnlyFans went, and I said, well, why don't we do an OnlyFans and see if we can go the opposite way, and you guys shot me down. But we did get the Patreon up and running. That was an interesting learning effort, and behind the curtain, I will tell you this. I think we drug our feet for 4 weeks before we put the actual Patreon live.
Yep. I mean, it goes along with that, fear of success, just like, okay, is this really good enough to put out? Oh, right. And just let alone saying, oh, I'm going to put a Twitter out and a podcast. I hope people are now you're asking for money, and it's not even a lot. I think our tiers are 5, 10, and at 25. We
have the insane. I put one on there because I was listening to a podcast that I really didn't like. I'm not naming it. I really didn't like. And at the end of that podcast, they started talking about the dollar amounts that they had gotten as payments, and they were ludicrous. They were $500 and $250. There was one for $1,000. I thought, this podcast is not good. Legitimately not good, and they were getting that. So I threw the crazy $25 one up there.
Yeah, and we, everything that people, donate, that's great. It's helping us to, move forward, build more content. And the other thing about it is another reason we want to do that is that we have other content we want to produce.
Right.
And we are producing, such as so we want to do all these games. Sometimes, and this is good to know for if you're running games, not every game works out, and not every game has to work out perfectly.
Oh, you're talking about the ones that we haven't put on that we thought that we. So there are a number of items that we have taken and recorded and said no.
Yeah. And it's not even, and I wouldn't even say this is the one that's up there right now. Great story.
Oh, so you're talking about, we should probably talk about this. You're talking about our B-sides.
Yes, the B-sides.
So the idea with the B-sides was we had been talking about, well, actually, let me go back. Yeah. When we start recording each evening, we kind of run the recorder there. We run the recording so people have the ability to get comfortable with the mic. So nobody is playing to the mic. And so the idea being you're going to talk about all these crazy things, and at some point we're going to step in and we're going to say, okay, game starts now. A couple of our people had said, why don't we put that up so people can hear us bantering beforehand? We kind of went back and forth. We haven't done it yet, but what came out of that was the B-sides. The idea that here is something that we like that is a little bit different than what we're doing. The Deep the Dark was something very different. The Dread game that Sequoia ran, it's behind the Patreon wall. The only way that you're going to get to hear it is you're going to have to subscribe to our Patreon. But we're looking at doing more of those because here is something that's going to be different from what we do regularly. Here is going to be your chance to hear something outside the box for us. And if people like it, we can do it on the regular. But for now, that's what the B-sides were.
Yeah, and super excited for that. You know, the story is great, and I'll get to the story in a minute. There's something more with that. You know, story is great. You know, you go in, we build the characters, so we have the character creation and the game, and then the game, I wouldn't even say it's bad. It just, yeah, like you said, it's, you know, it's different. It's not exactly what we were gonna go for.
It's not our regular thing.
Yeah, it's not our regular thing. And so, yeah, we decided, you know what, let's, you know, what are we gonna call these things? And I think it was Sequoia that came up with B-sides.
It pretty well was. I'm almost positive.
The name, yeah, and we were like, yeah, that's great. And so, yeah, so we put that up there, and so I still think it's worth a listen. And so if you feel like supporting and want to listen to that, not only will you be able to listen to that, but
here's now what Pedro's going to tell you is the secret to what we're doing with Patreon.
You will be able to get, you know, as part of your patronage, a copy of the module that we've created for the Deep the Dark.
Let's be honest, the Sequoia created.
Yes, the Sequoia created. Yeah. That's true. Sequoia created it. You know, their story. You know, you'll get to see what you can do with that. It's all encased. I don't want to go too deep into what it is. You can see a preview of it if you go and you look at the Patreon. I believe
it's
there's
not just the preview, right?
Yeah, you can kind of see the preview of what it is.
What you're able to do is you're able to go in there. Sequoia put together a PDF that you can download and print, but she put together a PDF so that if you wanted to run the Deep the Dark for someone else, for your friends, your group, at a convention, whatever, it's there. All the stuff that we went through in character generation, it's there. Obviously, you're not going to be us running it, but you've got the ability to download it. And that is something that we had talked about for a while. What content would be on Patreon that wouldn't be out there in the normal world for people to be able to grab. And one of the big things is we really honestly are all gamers first.
Yep.
This is a secondary, far lower than secondary. This is a tertiary thing in our world, but it's secondary to the actual role-playing side. And so as we're going forward, we've talked about for the Unhallowed game that we're running now, I'm running in Cairo. There was never anything written up. I'm going to at least try and verify with the producers of Unhallowed that they're not going to be upset with us putting it out there. But I intend to put the Cairo stuff so that if somebody wants to run Cairo for their game, something's going to be written up. A number of our other games that we have going, we have talked about putting components for it. We'll cover one of them quickly here. It's going to be in our near future, but we have the Honey Heist.
Yes.
And the Honey Heist, what Pedro did is he ran that for us. We played in it. That is going to appear very soon. At least portions of it are going to appear on the Patreon. But behind the Patreon paywall, you're going to be able to get Pedro's script. Is that what they call it?
Yeah. So just going into it, Honey Heist, for anybody who doesn't know, very simply, you have come up with a grand heist to steal a massive amount of honey from HoneyCon. For this one, it was 2021.
Yeah, by the way, he forgot to tell you, you're all bears.
Oh, yeah, I was getting to that. second part is that you're all bears.
There we go.
And so what I did is because in it you can kind of roll for certain things, but it's a small game. It's a 1-page or 2-page RPG. And so what I did is, I want to do a little bit extra. So not only would you get in this little adventure module, the map I created, basing off a little convention center. So you get a nice map with it. You'll also get my itinerary, which I'm proud of this one. I came up with a whole day's worth of honey and bee-related content, plenty of bee and honey puns, and that game was a blast. I'm very excited for that one to come out. So you'll be able to see that itinerary, be able to work with it. I mean, we only got to touch on some of it, but there's a whole number of things you can, what is it called? Bear Masters? Any Bear Masters want to throw at their players, it'll be all there. So that's something fun that being able to create and be able to give to people that, you hear it, you're fans of it, you want to do it yourself. Here's something you could take and make your own.
Right. And that kind of brings us now to where are we going? Mm-hmm. Because Honey Heist is not out. So in our near future, in the very near future, we do have Honey Heist coming out.
Yes.
With that, you're going to get Pedro's notes and the entire schedule, plus the map. That'll be behind the Patreon wall. We also have Call of Cthulhu coming, Masks of Nyarlathotep. We also have Star Wars. We have a Force and Destiny game.
Yep.
All of that is in the very near future. All of that will come. The Honey Heist is going to begin on Patreon. We are still getting some of the frontispieces made, but eventually that'll be out for everyone to see. But again, behind the Patreon is the only way you're going to be able to get the script to play it. If you want to play the exact same thing we did. Then let's move forward for there, because we have some. That's the near future. Those are things that we have gotten to the point where they're very close to coming. But we have some more stuff that's in the slightly later near future where we haven't started yet, but we're starting to work on it. One of the things, we looked at doing an alien RPG. Now, these are going to be, the idea right now with these is we're going to do some smaller games, something that's going to be a little more condensed. Although, a 2 to 3 night game that ran 14 nights, I'm not sure how condensed we'll be.
I think we can get there. We'll work on it. If the first one's, go 14, then we go to 10, we'll whittle our way down.
We'll whittle it down. So the alien RPG is coming. I'm going to be doing that one. The idea with that is going to be your basic alien world. I have a twist that I'm hoping to put in that might make it different from other games. We have Shadowrun in the very near future. We have not started yet. We have actually not populated that game completely. But we are doing 6th edition, SR6 as it's called, for Shadowrun. And then I'll let you talk about, because I don't completely understand what's going on, and maybe you can educate me along with the fans. We have the Altered Carbon versus Eclipse Phase games.
Yes. So, to our players, Michael and Sequoia. Michael had brought the idea, I believe it was from one of the cons that he went to, with doing this kind of back and forth game between 2 different systems.
Sure.
And so from my understanding, the idea is that both Sequoia and Michael will be running these games. One is not Fading Star, Eclipse Phase.
Right, I think Michael is going to do Eclipse Phase.
Michael's doing Eclipse Phase, and then Sequoia is doing Altered Carbon.
Altered Carbon, the new Altered Carbon.
Yes, the new Altered Carbon. And from my understanding, they are going to be similar stories and kind of in some manner crossovers.
Oh my God!
I believe
it's that crazy. So wait, so similar stories or identical stories? Are we running the same story in both?
It's from my understanding, and if I'm wrong, we'll be corrected. But from my understanding, there's going to be a connected story in some manner, and we'll be running them concurrently. I'm not entirely sure if we'll be running 4 sessions of Altered Carbon and 4 of Eclipse Phase, or if we're going to be doing one or the other. But I'm excited to see, because Michael and Sequoia are going to be collaborating and coming up with the story together, and so I'm really excited to see that, because I've never played in a game where you take 2 systems and kind of run the stories concurrently. I've heard of some things kind of doing similar ideas, but it's exciting and something different.
It's far beyond the normal house rules type thing that we do. I know for me, for years, when I was running a sci-fi game, I would go out, I would purchase every single new game that came out for science fiction role-playing, and then I'd pick and choose, take pieces from each. That's not what we're doing here, from what I understand.
No,
We're not mashing.
No. We're not mashing. No, it's going to be two separate but connected stories.
Okay.
So I'm excited to see how that one goes.
All right. And then I'll take you forward. We've got, this is the far future. I kind of want that, but I don't know if we're going to be able to pipe that one in. So my horrible singing there, that's all you get. Some of the things that we have on the docket for us, we are looking at the Die role-playing game, which isn't out now. It is still in beta, but it is available. One of our group really, really enjoys the system. Most of our group is actually reading the comic, and if you have not read the Die comic, it is absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend it, and in the back of each issue, he has some kind of a discussion about either the RPG or about the RPG world in general, and the trades are out, the comics are out. I know it's coming to a close, and what he had said is at the point, and the writer is Kieran Gillen, at the end, and oh God, I hope I said his name right. At the end of all of this, he said that once the comic is done, he is then going to finish producing the RPG, and we're going to be able to have it. So my store is going to have it. That's really cool, but we may get to run it in a beta form before. Additionally, for possibilities, I know that you had talked about running Don't Rest Your Head. Give us a little preview on that.
So Don't Rest Your Head. So I've ran, I think, 2 games of this, and one of them was a little chaotic, but one of them I just inadvertently terrified my players, and I was trying to, but it's hard to actually scare your players unless you really work hard with the lighting and the mood and everything. But Don't Rest Your Head, I love the idea of it, and I've actually used the idea in some other games or parts of it. So for anybody who doesn't know, go check it out. But Don't Rest Your Head, it's a small role-playing game. Idea is that all your characters are, as most characters should be, flawed individuals, and something has been keeping you up. And you have been awake for, I believe it was 3 days, and at one point you hear this little click. And the way the game describes it is that click now means you start seeing weird things. You'll be walking down the street and you're like, why is there a doorway, on that brick wall? There shouldn't be a door. Why is there a window right there? And you start seeing these weird things, and you haven't been able to sleep, and you actually really can't go back to sleep right now. And not only that, you start developing these powers. But along with that click they describe in the game is not, something clicking within you. It's actually a gun cocking and pointing at your head, because now the world, the unsleeping world, now has their eye on you. And all these nightmares and different entities that live in this other world start coming after you, because you're now a meal. You're on their radar. They want you.
Okay.
And so it's about playing these flawed characters and trying to balancing this life that's falling apart around you, while also trying to maintain your sanity, because the worst thing that can happen to you is not actually necessarily dying, it's falling asleep.
Okay, well that sounds exciting. That's going to be a good one.
Yeah.
I know that we have Warhammer 40K, the old Fantasy Flight Games one, the Death Watch setting was on the docket for us. I think we mentioned this before, but My Little Pony and Magical Kitty Save the Day.
You have some fun little games.
Right, those will be shorter sessions. I know that we had talked about a Weird West Deadlands. The new set has come out on the Suede edition for Savage Worlds, the Savage Worlds Adventurers. What was the other 2 letters?
Savage World Adventurers Deluxe Edition.
Deluxe Edition, right. And that we should hopefully be doing.
Yes, both of us are big fans of
very
Deadlands.
Big fans. I have been playing in a Deadlands game pretty much consistently since about 2001. So this is I think it's 4th incarnation, but super excited for that. We have at least 2 people talking about running End of the World.
Oh, and I'm a huge fan of End of the World. If you want a game system that is great for actual one-shots, that really boils down a great system for showing stress and damage and the taxing of going through an apocalyptic event, End of the World has it. It got it right. I would say even that it's a great beginner RPG, because the rules are very simple and straightforward, but they work perfectly.
Right, and the big one with this one is you generally are playing yourself.
Generally, yes, you are playing yourself, and they have interesting mechanics for coming up with your own stats, which can, depending on, if you're everybody should be there for a game. Some of it can, because you got this little like kind of roundabout way of testing to see if everyone's being on the up and up. If somebody who can't lift more than 40 pounds is like, yeah, I got a 6 strength, and they might be like, oh, do you
do you really?
But yeah, no, it's a fun time. It's straightforward. So I think I am excited to. I think I was one of the ones that's going to run.
There's actually, I'm not going to let it out of the bag for the other, but there are actually 2 people that talked about running an End of the World. And I will end our long shot possibilities with, we've had a couple people pipe in from previous talks talking about your Power Rangers game.
Yes.
And so what I'm going to say, I'm going to throw it out there for everyone. Keep pushing on that. If we get enough people pushing, I think Pedro's going to break down and put a world together and put the game back together for us.
I will say this is this is a game that I got to run partially years back. I had a group of friends who, I grew up with Power Rangers. They grew up with Power Rangers. They were like, Pedro, you're the forever GM, because that's who I was, and still sometimes am. Can we run a Power Rangers game? And I was like, yeah, sure. Let me just delve the next month into as much Power Rangers as I possibly can, all the lore. And they didn't just want to play like a regular Power Rangers game. They're like, can we do something like post-apocalyptic Power Rangers? And I'm like, all right, let's see if I could do that. And I'm tooting my own horn on that one. I will, if we do this game, I will be able to come up with, I think, an interesting module that will have a nice, interesting world that will be fun to play in, and also a good way of bringing all of the series together.
And it'll be a fun thing to listen to. So again, I'm going to throw that one out there. That is kind of our vote-in one.
Yeah.
If you're interested, please let us know. You can send emails to us. You can also hit us up regularly through any of our links, through Twitter, through Instagram, on our Facebook page, any place you want to tell us. Let's push Pedro to run. So I think that's it. I think we've kind of covered where we were, where we are now, where we're going, and gone.
Yeah. and yeah, that's the hard thing. I think any GM knows that you have more ideas for games than you really have time to play.
This is always true.
So yeah, we have a lot of stuff already thought of, and even more to think of in the future.
So I think that covers it for tonight, Pedro.
Yeah, I think that was
Thanks
good.
for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Have a great evening.
Everyone have a good one.
Thank you for listening to another NCRP Productions podcast. To stay on top of everything we're doing, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and like us on Facebook, all at NCRP Productions. You can show your support and help us continue to produce content by joining our Patreon. We offer additional podcasts like our B-sides and have GM materials, maps, and other fun things you can discover over time. You can find our podcasts on YouTube, Anchor, Spotify, Apple, Google, and many other fine podcast sites. Just look for us at NCRP Productions. We value your thoughts, so please don't hesitate to leave us feedback or comments. And if you would like to contact us directly, you can email us at ncrpproductions@gmail.com.